Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. As a place for offering sacrifices to heaven, the last person to use the Temple of Heaven was Yuan Shikai, the first president of the Republic of China. On the winter solstice of 1914, Yuan held a grand sacrificial ceremony there as a rehearsal for his planned coronation as emperor. Although his attempt to restore the monarchy ended in shameful failure, Yuan hoped to rally the people's support through the sacrificial ceremony at the Temple of Heaven. Many foreign journalists documented the event, and one of them, an American named John D. Zimbrin, captured these precious photos, which recorded the last imperial sacrificial ceremony in Chinese history. During the ceremony, Yuan Shikai, dressed in traditional Chinese imperial robes, closely imitated the rituals and dress of traditional emperors offering sacrifices to heaven. This behavior was supported by Confucian scholars and officials from the Qing dynasty. However, his actions were widely questioned and criticized by society. The ceremony began before dawn. In the early morning, the Temple of Heaven, located in the southeast of Old Beijing, was shrouded in a solemn and tense atmosphere as the night had not completely receded. Many people who were unaware of the situation were surprised to find that the north-south main roads between Jingyang Gate and Tiananmen had been temporarily closed to traffic, and all pedestrians passing through the area had to enter and exit from the left and right gates of Jingyang Gate. Along the way from Xinhua Gate to the Temple of Heaven, there were police guards and dirt roads, and the mobile vendors on both sides of Jingyang Gate and Tianqiao had already been driven away. Each store's front door hung the flag of the Republic of China. As for the area around the Temple of Heaven, thousands of soldiers armed with live ammunition were deployed, all waiting in high alert for a moment to come. At that time, the altar of heaven had been renovated, and soldiers wearing uniforms, feather headpieces, and holding long spears stood beside each fence. Over 200 musicians wearing star-studded blue robes and holding ancient, pre-Qin, instruments stood on both sides of the road. In addition, there was a large group of civil and military officials dressed in sacrificial robes. At dawn, Yuan Shikai, dressed in uniform, arrived in the presidential car escorted by cavalry outside the gate of the round altar. He was then carried by 8 bearers into a tent temporarily erected inside the wall, rather than the emperor's dressing room, where he changed into a sacrificial robe. The ceremony lasted for an hour. Yuan Shikai ascended to the second level of the circular mound altar from the south and stood facing north. After the bonfire was lit, he bowed deeply 4 times according to the instructions of the ritual officials. The civil and military officials also bowed together, and plates containing animal blood and fur were brought up to the altar. After offering silk, Yuan Shikai knelt on the first level of the altar. As the music for offering sacrificial meat played, the plates of animal blood and fur were immediately removed, and a bowl of hot soup was delivered to the president. Yuan Shikai held the bowl of tiangang, a type of soup, over his head and poured it onto the meat in the dish 3 times. Then the ritual official chanted prayers, while some people danced to the accompaniment of music. Yuan Shikai then raised his wine glass to make a toast to the heavens. After each prayer was recited, Yuan Shikai kowtowed to the altar 4 times, and the civil and military officials followed suit. The procedure for reciting several prayers was similar, while the accompanying music was different. After the prayers, the food was removed, and the imperial seal was placed in the center of the altar. Finally, to the accompaniment of solemn music, the sacrificial offerings, including the plaques with the prayers, silk, wine, and grains, were burned together on the pile of firewood, and the ceremony was over. Yuan Shikai changed his clothes in his tent, and then rode in the presidential car back to his residence in Zhongnanhai. In early December 1914, preparations began to renovate the facilities inside and outside the Temple of Heaven for the grand ceremony. From December 19th, Yuan Shikai and other officials began a 3-day fasting and purification ritual, and on December 21st, Yuan Shikai issued a special decree for the ceremony. The Ministry of the Interior of the Beiyang government carefully prepared for the grand ceremony and made detailed regulations for the ritual clothing, etiquette, and offerings in a retro style. In fact, as early as July 1912, the original Forbidden City's Temple of Heaven had been transformed into an agricultural experiment station, where the government planned to grow crops. However, the development of events was so unexpected that only 2 years later, on the winter solstice of 1914, the first president of the Republic of China, Yuan Shikai, held the last grand ceremony in Chinese history at the abandoned Temple of Heaven. The Temple of Heaven was a sacred site where Ming and Qing dynasty emperors prayed for good harvests, rain on the summer solstice, and snow on the winter solstice. It is the largest existing temple building in China, with an area of over 2.7 million square meters, more than twice the size of the Beijing Forbidden City. The two-tiered wall formed an inner and outer altar, with the circular mound altar in the south and the altar of prayer for good harvest in the north, both on the same north-south axis, separated by a wall. The main buildings inside the circular mound altar are the Imperial Vault of Heaven, while those inside the altar of prayer for good harvests include the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, the Hall of Imperial Zenith, and the Gate of Prayer for Good Harvests. The circular mound altar, also known as the Temple of Heaven, is the site where emperors held ceremonies to worship the heavens. It was first built in 1530 and expanded in 1749. The altar is surrounded by two earthen walls, the first square and the second circular, symbolizing the concept of the heavens are round and the earth is square. The number 9 was considered to be the ultimate number in ancient China, the most revered symbol, and therefore the architecture of the altar of heaven is closely related to the number 9. At the center of the altar is a circular marble stone called the Heavenly Center Stone. Facing outward from the center, there are 3 tiers of terraces, each tier consisting of 9 concentric slabs with fan-shaped ends. The first tier has 9 slabs, the second has 18, the third has 27, and so on, up to the 9th tier, which has 81 slabs. The middle tier has slabs numbered from 90 to 162, and the bottom tier has slabs numbered from 171 to 243. In total, there are 378 nines, or 3,402 slabs, symbolizing the 9 heavens. The circular mound altar is 534 meters in circumference and 5 meters in height, consisting of 3 tiers, upper, middle, and lower. The lower tier has a diameter of 70 meters, the middle tier has a diameter of 50 meters, and the upper tier has a diameter of 30 meters. The sum of these 3 numbers is 45, which corresponds to the 9 and 5 honors. In Chinese culture, the number of carved stone slabs on the 4 sides of the altar of heaven is also specified. There are 45 slabs on each side of the first tier, 27 on each side of the second tier, and 18 on each side of the third tier. The total number of slabs on the railings of the 3 tiers is 360, which corresponds to 1 cycle in the Chinese calendar. To the north of the circular mound altar is the Imperial Vault of Heaven, where emperors worship the God of Heaven and their ancestors. Originally called the Temple of Supreme God when it was built in 1530, it was later renamed the Imperial Vault of Heaven. During the Ming Dynasty, all the buildings, including the gatehouse, roofs, and walls, were covered with green glazed tiles. When it was renovated in 1752 during the reign of Emperor Qianlong of the Qing Dynasty, blue glazed tiles were used for the gatehouse, roofs, and walls, and blue glass bricks were used for the surrounding walls. The circular shape of the walls around the Imperial Vault of Heaven represents the heavens, and the walls are famous for their echo effect. The Temple of Heaven was the most sacred place in China during the Ming and Qing dynasties because it symbolized the heavenly emperor. However, regardless of Yuan Shikai's intentions for the Tiantan ceremony, this act clearly caused strong reactions in society. Soon after, the public opinion almost unanimously believed that he was preparing for the restoration of the monarchy. In his diary, J. Reinsch, the American envoy to China at the time, wrote, "This event means that Yuan is moving towards usurping the throne." Amidst the various discussions and questioning of this ceremony, the curtain slowly opened in 1915. Various signs indicate that for China, this was undoubtedly an extremely unusual year. It is worth noting that Yuan Shikai was born in 1859 and died in 1916. He rose to power in Korea before returning home to train the new army at a small station in Tianjin. During the late Qing dynasty and the new policy period, he actively promoted modernization and reform. During the Xinhai Revolution, he forced the Qing Emperor Puyi to abdicate and peacefully overthrew the Qing dynasty, becoming the interim president of the Republic of China. In 1913, he suppressed the Second Revolution and was elected as the first president of the Republic of China in the same year. In 1914, he promulgated the Constitution of the Republic of China, and in December 1915, he declared himself emperor, changing the name of the country to the Chinese Empire, known as the Hongxian reign. This move was opposed by all sides, sparking the Protect the Country movement. Yuan Shikai had to declare the cancellation of the monarchy after being emperor for 83 days. He died on June 6, 1916, of uremia, and was buried in Anyang, Hunan. This is History and Culture Channel. Likes and subscriptions are the greatest help and support for us. Thank you everyone. See you next time.